Good day once again, and welcome to another topic on our UTS course, which is entitled Unfolding of the Spiritual Self. So, this section we will be talking about the nature of spirituality. How is it different from religiosity? And we will also be talking about the factors that shape our spirituality and its impact on ourselves. In this section, it is also inevitable that we will be talking about the aspects of spirituality from existence, relatedness, or connections, and also the inner soul. So, let's begin. Now, the concept of the whole person is usually associated to the idea of human beings as having physical and psychological aspects. The physical domain covers the biological aspects of human development, including growth, maturation, and other bodily changes. The psychological aspects, or the psychological aspect, cover about the development, focusing on the consciousness and attributes that are not directly observable but manifested in behavior. However, there is a third aspect of being human that is as important as the two precedents. And I'm talking about the spiritual aspect of the self. And spirituality has been widely studied by a number of researchers and um, academics across several disciplines, but remain to be elusive in terms of having a standard definition. Now, we are to highlight the mind body spirit connection. The spiritual self is an ongoing personal life journey contextualized by the belief in a higher being, culture, relationships, nature, and the discovery of meaning in one's life. And there had been a number of definitions formulated regarding spirituality. And one of the most famous definition is that of Pochalski in 2014, wherein um, it described spirituality as the aspect of the self that is associated to an individual's process of seeking and expressing meaning in how he or she is connected to the self, to others, to the moment, and to everything else that composes his or her environment, including the sacred and significant. So, part of our spirituality is finding what our existence means and how we are connected to ourselves and to others, and how those entities, which are considered to be sacred and significant, likely um, connects to our being. That's according to Pochalski. Now, Beauregard and O'Leary in 2007 described spirituality as any experience that is thought to bring the experiencer, meaning us, in contact with the divine. It is not just any experience that feels meaningful. So it is being connected according to Beauregard and O'Leary into something that is bigger than us, something more divine, something in a sort of supreme being. And Synod in 2002 described spirituality as posited in the individual's personal relation to the sacred or transcendent, a relation that then informs the other relationships and the meaning of one's own life. And to add another definition, Myers and his colleagues define spirituality as the personal and private beliefs that transcend the material aspects of life and give a deep sense of wholeness, connectedness, and openness to the infinite. So for them, spirituality embraces connections with oneself, with others, and a higher being. So you might actually be questioning right now, what do these definitions have in common with regard to spirituality? So let's talk about the first aspect. It talks about meaning and purpose that go beyond the physical realities of life. So going through development, people are inevitably programmed to make realizations about life, and those insights are not always about observable phenomena or environmental experiences. Phenomena meaning um, it happens in the environment, and personal experiences. One that some may go observed or they are observed, and subsequently meanings are assigned and philosophical rationalizations about why they happen are achieved. Well, many researchers have said that there is a need to discover the meaning of life. What one should ask himself or herself is, what meaning do I put in my life? The meaning and rationalizations one makes influence the way life is viewed and become the basis for one's value orientations and personal standpoints. So it is the meaningfulness of life which is assessed if it is worth living. So other than just our existence, we try to look for our meaning in life aside from having our physical body in this existence. We tend to also find meaning and purpose. So what can we find as a meaning and a purpose in this life is something that what spirituality is about, which basically talks about the first aspect of spirituality. So the question is our life about trying to be selfless, to be of service to other people? Is our life about making other people happy or seeing your family happy? Or is it a worth living kind of life that we are into? Because at the end of the day, it is always about how we determine that meaning and that purpose. And that is why we are not giving up in the kind of life that we are having and enjoying right now. Now, the second aspect talks about spirituality that is focused on a person's connection or connections to different aspects of his or her existence, like to other people, to nature, and to the sacredness and divinity. So here, spirituality is described to be relational. So in the pursuit of and applying meaning to one's life, relationships are created and as well as sustained, not only with people but with other life forms or with higher being. So the divinity, not just to other people, but to also other life forms like animals and many others. And the way people relate to others, especially to family members, to peers in school, and to also nature, no, which speaks of an individual core values. And that is the reason why now in this last um, entity that I was talking about, not the nature, that is why we cannot easily isolate ourselves. We would always look for means to go to the beach, trek to the mountains, and be one with nature. And that is also one important aspect of our spirituality, to be connected to many different entities, not just with people, not just with ourselves. Okay. The third aspect is that spirituality talks about the sacred and the transcendent. So it is a general belief that in this vast universe, there is a force higher than the self. No? In believing that death is inevitable, the different beliefs of what comes after shape how people choose to act and live their lives. So the search for sacredness is also triggered by the drive to attain peace and life fulfillment. And acceptance or contentment is fostered and established despite problems that may occur. So these three aspects tell us that spirituality is a natural part of our development process. Its biological influence is rooted in how it is initially based on the awareness of what happens in the environment. Further, in the search for identity and ultimately the self, it is important to contemplate about the here and the now, as well as the future. However, people are not born with innate spirituality. It is something acquired as a result of various personal, social, and environmental factors present throughout our lifetime. So, in this regard, spirituality is somewhat related to religiosity, which is often used interchangeably with the former. And let's try to discuss now what's the difference between spirituality and religiosity. Now, religiosity is the adherence to a belief system and practices associated with a tradition in which there is agreement about what is believed and what is practiced. And it is also a formal attachment to the set of beliefs, values, and practices of a particular religious sect. Religion also includes specific practices, proscriptions, what should be done, what should be avoided, and participation in specific community that shares the same beliefs and practices. While it is true that spirituality is not innate but developed, religiosity can be a starting point, okay, for spirituality. So specific practices like going to the church and participating in religious events are usually practiced by an individual through the influence of our parents. Okay. And aside from our parents, there are schools that are founded on religion, and teachers sometimes aid in understanding the importance of attending religious affairs through inclusion of such activities in school programs. Organizations devoted to particular religions are also established, and membership to these is encouraged. No? And even in the media, it extends its influence to the watching public through programs that highlight morals, values, and religious views in turn shape one's character. In fact, right now in the time of the crisis, we can easily turn on our television and we would be viewing easily the mass, or be activating our social media accounts, and we could easily be viewing and attending the mass. But however, as one grows older, he or she begins to form questions that are rooted in religious orientation, slowly making realizations and insights until his or her search for meaning and transcendence goes beyond his or her religious orientation. What started as a ritualistic tradition eventually becomes a personal and meaningful manifestation of faith. So it is not just about the church, it is not about the religious orientation, but it is us who will be able to identify our personal and meaningful manifestation of our own faith. Now, as a mere difference, spirituality is individual, while religiosity could be communal. For religiosity, beliefs and practices are within religious groups, and religious commitment, like conservatism and even skepticism. But for spirituality, attributes include the need for spiritual quest, ecumenical worldviews, compassion, service, and inner peace. Spirituality is not anchored in any religious orientation. It is a personal, subjective experience that varies from person to person. A person can possess spirituality even if he or she does not subscribe to any religion. And spiritual models are present everywhere. They function for respondents such as exemplars of spiritual qualities relating to compassion, self-control, or faith. Thus, a person can be spiritual without being religious. So we might be questioning, what does spirituality bring to one's life? For many people, the search for sacredness and transcendence can bring positive consequences to life. It has been associated with positive physical and mental health, and even well being. A spiritual person finds contentment and serenity in his or her life circumstances. He or she finds anchor in whatever he or she believes in and aligns his or her thoughts, his words, her actions to his or her spiritual beliefs. He or she engages in activities that boost his or her self respect and actualization. And spiritual well being entails wisdom, self transcendence, meaning you are able to transcend, understand how life is and what life is in a deeper sense, acceptance of life and meaningful existence. And thus, it increases the person's self esteem, enhances interpersonal relationships through the establishment of trust, and encourages people to engage in positive, meaningful behavior. So, through spirituality, questions such as, am I a good person? Or how can I live a life to the fullest? Or how can I live my life to the fullest? So, most importantly, spirituality allows one to become resilient amidst challenges and roadblocks that occur daily in our lives. So, how can we enhance spirituality? Spirituality is a natural aspect of self development. So, for parents, fostering quality parent child relationship have a significant positive influence on one's spiritual orientation. For schools, introducing programs and interventions which include retreats, recollections, seminars, and worship. Okay, those are actually some of the benefits of having those kinds of activities to help one on how to be able to start and establish his or her own spirituality. So, utilizing teaching strategies that foster contemplation, reflection, and self evaluation can strengthen one's spiritual well being. But we need to take note that the best way of enhancing spirituality lies within ourselves. So, constant reflection and meditation of life choices and decisions, no, not rushing things, trying to always think and meditate about what we really want, what we really need, developing empathy and compassion toward other people. So, help as many people as we can without giving up on people, and having faith in a higher being can enhance spiritual intelligence, right? So you heard that right. People who have this um, who follow a certain religion are also happier in life. And that is actually a result of a study. It is not about finding meaning in life, but rather how meaning is applied to life. So we would always, not just like this crisis, no, we always try to ask, when would this crisis end? Um, what can I do to stop this crisis? Or in fact, we could also try to twist the question like, how has this crisis changed me? What were the aspects of myself that were improved, no, because of this crisis? And how could I be able to turn the tables and make this crisis as an opportunity for me to improve myself, right? So, spirituality paves the way for creating meaning, vision, and values in the things that people do. And most importantly, it enables an individual to further understand himself or herself. So, we also have connections with nature. So, the spiritual self is not only tied in one's connection with a higher being and other people, it is also related to how people relate to nature. Like for Christians, for instance, it is stated in the Bible we are appointed as stewards of God's creation, and this implies one's responsibility to take care of nature and the world in general. Although this comes from the context of Christianity, the idea that the Bible passage carries is very relevant to how an individual should be conscious of nature regardless of his or her religious belief. In fact, during pre-colonial times, no, our ancestors practiced animism, that they um, pay respect to the animals, they pray to the trees, bodies of water, and land. They even offered prayers and respect nature because they believed that damaging the environment would anger the gods and result in dire or negative consequences in their daily life. Even now, some religious practices in other parts of the world practice similar traditions by avoiding eating certain animals that are considered sacred within their religious and cultural beliefs. So, religiosity aside, a significant number of people have made a serious commitment to nature by taking care of animals. So, that's one way. And pledging advocacy for environmental issues and practicing daily behaviors that manifest a growing concern for the world. So these are embodied in the concepts of affinity with nature and also uh, eco psychology. Now, affinity with nature can be defined as the ties that bind people and nature together. It can also mean nature connectedness, which is defined as the existent to or sorry the extent, no, to which individuals include nature as part of their identity. So if people feel that they are one with nature, then destroying it can mean self-destruction and vice versa. An individual with a strong affinity with nature feels that his or her identity is tied to his or her natural environment, which tells us that that person genuinely cares for the environment and commits to taking care of it. So this is also linked to the pro-environmental human actions, which showcase behaviors rooted to caring and protecting one's surroundings. And for that, we should be conscious with our actions because affinity with nature is just like marrying with nature, meaning whatever you do to the environment would likely be affecting us in return. So, how do we take part? How do we perform our part? Let's start at home. Like, for example, how do we clean? Are we using plastic? Are we throwing them everywhere or anywhere? And when it comes to talking about using plastics? How often do we use them? Do we recycle them? Or do we throw them right away? Now, moving forward, ecopsychology shares many similarities with the concept of having affinity with nature. It is concerned with the fundamental interconnections between humans and the natural world through a phenomenological and sensorial link, and the integration of practices based on notion that direct contact with the natural world has healing potential. So while it is fairly obvious that both concepts focus on the connection of man to nature, their distinction lies on the nature of the connection they are referring to. Affinity with nature highlights the emotional connection with nature, anchored on positive affective experiences and authentic love for nature. However, ecopsychology is based on a transpersonal and philosophical relationship with nature, highlighting beliefs and practices that promote and enhance ecological, personal, and community sustainability. So, how can we be able to develop affinity with nature and ecopsychology? So, just like other aspects of the self, these are brought about by experiences with nature and observations about the environment. Parental behavior accounts for much of one's beliefs about nature and the environment. For example, having pets in the house and inculcating the responsibility of taking care of them can lead to the love for animals, which is, in the long run, can result to advocacies against animal cruelty on the grounds that they are living creatures and deserve gentleness and respect. And on the other hand, teaching children the value of recycling, taking care of gardens, and throwing trash properly can instill respect for the environment and love for nature. And back when we were still in grade school, like in schools, certain programs are embedded within our curricula that provide exposure to nature and environment, like tree planting activities, service programs, community outreach, camping trips, or even school club activities that orient students to become environmentally conscious, like the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts organization. So these can shape and even prosper the value orientations and behaviors of individuals, especially at a young, impressionable age that they can sustain as they get older. So lastly, we now go to the question, how are connections with nature established and improved? So first, we consider that it is not enough that one simply conforms to what society says about taking care of the environment. Research has shown that personal standpoints have a strong relationship to one's affinity with nature and eco-psychology. So we should be the one developing that mindset and having that philosophical perspective that we should be advocating for environmental protection and sustainability. Second, the emergence of technology has hampered people's engagement with the outside activities. So while in the past, children can be seen playing outside, while right now, children today are glued to the electronic gadgets. So these activities have weakened the human nature connection. So there is that need for us to reconnect with um, nature, and we should be literally smelling the roses, touching the trees, no, without us trying to touch the trees through Minecraft or many other virtual games. And lastly, while not all people are meant for being active environmental advocates, incremental behaviors toward protecting the environment can go a long way. So disposing of and segregating garbage properly, avoiding plastic use and other non-biodegradable materials, and taking care of pets can be some of the ways which one's unity with the nature is showcased. So in taking care of nature, an individual also takes care of himself or herself, thus contributing to the optimal healthy development. So again, we should be taking a stand, identifying a philosophical point of view on how we could be able to help um, preserve our environment, preserve nature, and thus we could also be developing as healthy individuals because we would also be observing that it is still a good world to live, a healthy environment where we could also be um, raising our children later on, or maybe helping the next generation in general. Now, on this part, moving forward, we will be looking into discovering life's meaning. So, human beings are naturally inclined to assess their life. Maybe at the end of the day, we try as much as possible to question how have how have we lived the day so far, or how did our day go. So we reflect on the choices that we have made, evaluate the consequences of our choices, and learn lessons from different experiences that we have had. So discovering meaning and how meaning is put in one's life is a vital component in achieving well-being and satisfaction. So well-being and satisfaction or life satisfaction are interchangeably used, but there is a thin line that distinguishes one from the other. Well being is an intrinsic, an inner, personal construct associated with self esteem and self understanding. So, in other words, it is good how good one feels about himself or herself, which permeates his or her entire being. And on the other hand, life satisfaction is the contentment one has with the direction his or her life is going. So, as mentioned with the previous discussion, it is about the circumstances that he or she finds himself or herself in and the elements that make up his or her life conditions. Life satisfaction is also intrinsic, but in this case, it is the general attitude towards life. So, happiness is generally regarded as the emotional result of life satisfaction. And life satisfaction can refer to the desire to change one's life. Satisfaction with the past, satisfaction with the future, and significant others' views of one's life, according to Diner et al. So you might pose a question, how are well-being and life satisfaction achieved? So researchers have cited many factors that influence how they can be achieved. So personal factors such as personality, cognition, physical health, and vigor have been associated with well-being and life satisfaction. Further, environmental conditions contribute to individual life satisfaction, socioeconomic status, home and social environment, interpersonal relationships, and education also influence one's well-being, and basic needs and other goals are met. So the more goals are met, life satisfaction increases. Remember that. So the more goals that we meet in life, the more goals that we achieve in life likely increases our life satisfaction. Healthy mindsets that can lead to healthy lifestyles should also be adopted. Engaging in forward thinking and becoming community oriented are only some of the things that can be done to enhance our overall quality of life. But just to take note of the things that I have also discussed, well being and life satisfaction are highly personal and relative. Okay, it is about one's subjective perception about how is life treat, treating him or her. So, similar to personal meanings attributed to the generated um, daily life, how one feels about himself or herself and the life he or she lives is dependent on how he or she defines meaningful life. So, for instance, the collectivistic nature of Filipinos is manifested in the close knit relations of family, among classroom peers and friends. So much of life satisfaction is attributed in how others are valued and how one is valued in return. So when one feels support from other people, life satisfaction too is better achieved and well-being is also better experienced. So within the context of spirituality, being cognizant or being aware of our purpose in life, accepting limitations and celebrating strengths, okay, enabling love and concern for others, and engaging in behaviors that embody all these will lead one to have well-being and life satisfaction. So like celebrating simple achievements in life. I don't know if you are aware, there is also a group on Facebook that they are always posting things that they are grateful for in every day. Like they are grateful for um, their pens, their notebooks, or they're grateful for something that had helped them to survive the rest of the day. And that is what they call as the 365 day project, where they get to post things every day and be um, nurturing grat that culture of gratitude rather than be bitter with life. And in searching for um, the sacred and transcendent and establishing a relationship with what one believes in, it is important to start with being the best version of ourselves. It does not mean achieving perfection in life, but making the most of what life offers.